Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages with your host Raghunath and co-host and bestie and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast where we are going to go over question day today. Today is the day of the week that people write in their questions. You know, we got a whole audience of people on a spiritual path because there's a lot of paths out there. And a spiritual path, it's rare to find people on a spiritual path. People on a material path, people on a business path, a creative path. This sort of combines everything. How am I going to have a spiritual path in the midst of the material world? And a lot of questions come up with that. It's a daily study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered the essence of all Vedic thought, of yogic teachings. And one day a week, we chill out. We sleep until 8 o'clock. I rolled out of bed at 5:30 today, Kaustubha. I'm a bad boy.
That is shameful.
Shameful. Boy.
You deserve it, Raghu. You deserve it. Yeah. Do what you got to do.
Yeah. So, first I want to introduce Mara here. Mara is our, she really does, I want to give credit to Mara. She's really taking all these questions and filing them and putting them in different orders. Thank you, Mara. Mara, if you want to reach out to her with a question for Question Day, or if you want to join our secret Zoom cult, you can join us by jumping through a few hoops, like writing Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. That's wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And she will tell you the secret rituals to enter our little cult here.
Raghu, we got a good post on Patreon. Can I read it quick?
Sure.
They said, I love Wisdom of the Sages, but I'm loving Patreon even more. Thanks for all the solid content. Netflix, you are dead to me.
Oh,
ooh, that was sweet.
Right?
That was very sweet.
Who was that?
Darcy Robinson.
Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you, Darcy.
Imagine if we had like a setup where people could tune in to, like, we had a whole variety. Like you got like 7 choices of things that are like Bhakti, spiritually related.
It's coming. Bhakti Entertainment.
Right?
Bhakti Entertainment. I'm going to send out the link for that soundtrack. If you're listening on Zoom, I'm going to send you that link right now.
Pippin?
No, not Pippin. The whole questions thing.
Right.
If you like musicals, it's like a spiritual musical. It was big in the Krishna movement in the 70s, and it's come full circle.
You were playing it earlier because everybody that's
if you're listening, you could have only heard it if you listened to it on Zoom, I think, because it was my introduction.
Yeah, the Zoomers heard it.
The Zoomers heard it. I'm going to send that link right now. I also want to say I got a nice email from Len Cohen, who's married to Vrinda, Vishwambar's wife's mom. He got into this when he was 54. Now he's 70, and he says, it's hard. He's not crazy about going to Bhagavatam classes at a temple because he always found them dry. But he said, Wisdom of the Sages has enabled me to find laughter, enlightenment from reading and hearing this ripe fruit of the Vedas. Because Raghu and Kaustubha, you guys make it fun and juicy and enlivening. I'm not an early bird, so I usually listen to the podcast around 10. So I try to make Zoom podcasts at the more reasonable time of 8 on my weekends. My wife also became a fan, so we can both get reconnected to the Bhagavatam through you guys. Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Well, welcome, Len. And
I think we met him in Mayapur when we were there last.
Maybe.
Or at least I did.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. And also thanks for doing it as a couple. You can bring your spouse, your best friend, your kids, your pets, everybody. Make it like a family weekend. Let this be one of the rituals.
All right. Like Chris and Hugo over there.
Chris and Hugo.
The little one poking his head in there. Yeah.
Let's dive into our questions because we got a lot of questions. And
Okay.
I'm going to, and we have first one's from Tracy Conway. She's old school Wisdom of the Sages. She was on the show way before Wisdom of the Sages when it was called the Super Soul Sacred Sangha.
That's right.
Truthfully, she's probably one of my first students up there with Carla, the coach, since I've moved to New York City, or New York State rather, from Los Angeles. So here's what Tracy has to say.
Yeah.
What else can I do? What else can I do a japa meditation with other than saying Hare Krishna? I love chanting, but even after all these years, I still say God, not Krishna. I don't feel that connection. Can I chant the 108 beads chanting something else?
Okay.
Question.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question, Tracy. I'm gonna do, I would like to be kind of liberal and say, sure, here's something else to chant. If this makes you happy, go for it. But I'm not gonna do that.
Ooh, see, that's why we pushed this question at Kaustubha, the conservative.
The conservative. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. But I'm gonna try to share it with you why, and try to also hopefully maybe, I don't know, share some perspective or inspiration. Let's see what I can do with it. I'm not going to recommend that you drop the Maha Mantra. And if we call the show Wisdom of the Sages. So let's go to the sages, right? If we go to the Kali Santarana Upanishad, which is Kali Santarana means it's the Upanishad for crossing over the age of Kali, right? For crossing over all the age of quarrel and hypocrisy in the world that we're kind of stuck in right now.
Yep.
In the Kali Santarana Upanishad, you have the conversation between two sages, the sage Narada, and he's being spoken to by Brahma, the very creator of the universe that we live in. So this is what Brahma says to Narada. He says, hear of that which all the Vedas keep secret and hidden, through which one may cross the samsara, the cycle of birth and death. By the chanting of these names, by chanting these names of the original person, one shakes off the negative effects of Kali. Then Narada asks to be told this name, and Brahma replies, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. These 16 names are destructive of the negative effects of Kali. No better means than this is to be seen in all the Vedas. Okay, so for this, partially for this reason, I would say that rather than change the mantra, where this mantra is specifically designed to counteract the negative effects of this age, and not only that, but to deliver the very highest spiritual gift, and I'll get to that in a bit, that I would say, let's not switch the mantra, but let's look at the connection, right? Because Tracy mentions, I don't feel the connection. Even after years of chanting this, I don't really feel the connection. So, connection is an interesting word. The idea of connection is dealt with a lot in the Bhagavad-Gita, through words like yukta or yoga, it has to do with connection. And, say you have a goal, and that is to light up your room. So generally the way that you do that is you would take a lamp and you plug it into a socket, and by plugging it into the socket, it would connect to a circuit, and then you'd flip on the switch, and then you get some light. But say you go and you take that lamp and you plug it into the wall and you flip the switch and there's no light. So then one could say, there are three different things you could do at that point. You could just give up and say, I'm going to just live in darkness. Or you could plug another appliance into the socket. Let me get the blender, see if that works. Or let me get, a hairdryer and plug that in there. But neither of those are going to give you what you were searching for. But another thing that you could do is you could identify where the disconnect lies in the circuit, right? It could be the light bulb is the problem, and you need to put a new light bulb in there. It could be that the cable is a problem. It could be that there's what do they call those things? I can't think of it. There's when you blow a
router. router,
router.
breaker,
You're always
breaker,
having internet problems. But you know those
fuse.
Thank you, fuse. Yeah. So it may be that the fuse has been blown.
Leslie got it.
Yeah. Thank you. It may be that so there's something in the connection that's not complete, so I'm not getting the result. But a blender is not going to give me light, and a hair dryer is not going to give me light. What I really got to do is identify where the problem is. Why isn't this lighting up? So there are a lot of mantras out there. There are mantras that people chant for money, right?
I need a money mantra right now.
I need a money. You need a money mantra.
You got a money mantra for me, Kaustubha?
Yeah, but I'm not going to give it to you.
Prosperity mantra.
People chant
an abundance mantra, perhaps.
An abundance one. People chant. I remember once. I remember when I was a kid. I was. You remember the club? It was called the Ritz at the time. Remember the Ritz? Now they're called Webster Hall. Did you ever play the Ritz?
I saw Haircut 100 at the Ritz.
Raghu, your musical background is all getting revealed now. Pippin, Haircut 100. What kind of punk rock?
They were great. Haircut 100. They were great.
Who were you there with? Did you went alone? Did you let anybody know about this?
I think I went with a friend from high school.
Okay. So I remember I was there with a couple of friends of mine, and we're outside the Ritz, and the band Black Uhuru was playing. You know, I was into reggae. And I remember that these Buddhists came up and they gave us this mantra. They were monks, and they gave us this mantra, like, you know, I couldn't get in because I didn't have any money. And they gave us this mantra. You know, it was a popular Buddhist mantra. But the way that they were presenting that mantra was that this is just about getting what your desires are, right? You chant this mantra and think about what you want.
Yeah, I know those Buddhists. I hung with those Buddhists.
Did you hang with them?
I hung with them because I dated one.
Okay.
And it was, you chant and you get stuff. Not all Buddhists are like that,
no,
but these Buddhists were.
So, well, that's the point. Within all the spiritual traditions, there's the idea of karma, jnana, and bhakti, right? Karma meaning I want the stuff of this world. Jnana meaning I want relief from the sufferings of this world. I want liberation. I want freedom. I want peace. And then, but the ultimate goal of all these spiritual traditions is divine love. I'm not trying to get something. I'm not trying to escape something. I'm trying to revive the divine love that is my own nature. And that's what the Maha Mantra does. That's the whole point to the Maha Mantra. So if we say, okay, if this is the mantra and if that's my goal, if your goal is money, then there's other mantras. If your goal is liberation, there's other mantras.
If it's love of God, we got the mantra for you.
We got the mantra for that. And so what I'd say is, and this is really important, what I'm about to share right now. And and by this, I'm definitely not saying this solely to Tracy, but I'm just saying that one can approach that mantra and think, well, I'm chanting, but I'm not getting anything exciting from it. I don't feel something rapidly happening to me. Is it really working? But really, that this chanting the Maha Mantra in the Bhakti tradition, it's not something that you do to just find some kind of quick satisfaction or thrill from. You might get that in a kirtan or something like that, and that's great. But really, it's something that one dedicates their life to with the goal of achieving the very pinnacle of all human achievement, which is the revival of one's true nature, one's divine love, wherein one, the Sat Chit Ananda nature, the eternality, the full knowledge and full bliss manifests entirely, and I feel entirely connected with love to God and to every living being. That's what one is that's the potential that this mantra has for one. And so
welcome to the Tracy Conway show, everybody. We are taking Tracy Conway's questions for the.
You're saying I'm taking too long?
Well, we have this agreement. We were going to go very, very fast.
And I told you that I was going to take a while on the first question.
It's a great question. It's a great question, but this is actually important. And you know what I love about you, Kaustubha, is you're not giving your opinion. This is actually why I fell in love with Bhakti tradition, is because I don't want to hear some beautiful Swami's answer in a very delicate way that's not going to offend me. You're just saying, look, this is what they say. And the first thing you did is you quote from sacred literature. It's not my opinion. This is just what the sacred literature says. And you took it there from the get-go, right out of the gate.
Okay, well, let me wrap it up then, Raghu, okay?
Okay, yes.
Because I want to hear from you.
No, it's okay. I'm being a little
I'm willing to hear you sing Pippin if that's what it takes to hear from you.
all right.
Although I don't know how
These
long
people
I can
don't even know
endure
what
that.
Pippin is. They're not that evolved.
I don't either. I just know it's some Broadway play. Okay, but so again, if my idea is that through chanting this mantra, I'm not just trying to get some kind of immediate kind of thrill or something, but I'm actually cultivating the very highest consciousness, and I'm ready to dedicate my life to it. It means that everything that I do in my life is tied into it. My occupation or the services that I do is tied into my chanting the mantra. How I behave in my relationships with others, my studies, even my entertainment, everything is part of a practice that prepares me to enter deeper into the mysteries of the Maha Mantra. And we enter into it with the faith that everything beautiful and satisfying is there in this mantra. Not even just in part, but it's completely there, because the mantra itself is non-different from Krishna, the source of everything. So all the texts coming from Vyasadeva, all the yogic texts, they all build up to the Bhagavatam, which builds up to the 10th canto, which builds up to the Rasa Lila. And the Maha Mantra, it is this Rasa Lila, the divine dance of the feminine and the masculine divinity, combined with, all living beings in a beautiful mandala, and when one chants this Maha Mantra, it's calling for the presence of the divine feminine and masculine energies in their most complete and perfectly beautiful and merciful manifestation. And through chanting this mantra, one enthrones Radha and Krishna in the heart through this sonic mandala. I'm just scratching the surface of the mysteries of what's there. I'm just trying to understand it myself. I'm dedicating my life to it. But I recommend that rather than switch, to try to enter in more deeply. And you can go to expert Bhakti yogis to find out more about how to do that. That would be my humble recommendation, Tracy. And forgive me for taking so long to answer.
It's okay.
Right.
Yeah. No offense. Actually, I can listen to you. When I get in the car, I listen to Wisdom of the Sages to sort of like to see how I sound.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I get to my voice, I'm like, oh, that sounded horrible. And when I get to listen to you, I was like, oh, keep talking, Kaustubha. Keep talking. I'm serious.
I think I love
when I'm actually doing the show, I think I'm much better than I actually am. But when I listen back, I realize, oh, man. So anyway.
Parmanand is asking, did I get into the reggae show by chanting that Buddhist mantra?
Did you get into the reggae show by chanting the Buddhist mantra? No,
I must not have done it right.
He's combining my stories.
Okay. Are you ready for a question?
Yes, sir.
Raghu, this is a heavy question.
Let's see. I can take the weight.
It's anonymous. It's coming from anonymous.
Okay.
And this is kind of like, tied into the old stripped down talk about sex. This is about sex, Raghu.
It's a sex question. You always give me the sex questions.
Because you're so realized. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
How do you know if the underlying desire or curiosity to explore other women is solely driven by lust, or if there's a genuine curiosity or interest to connect with others? How do you regulate your lust or interest for other women when you know you are in a powerful sacred partnership already? And finally, I guess gratitude is the key. I guess just how you navigate lust or sexual desire as a yogi in today's world. That sentence wasn't complete, but what they're asking is, how do you navigate lust or sexual desire as a yogi in today's world? What is the right balance? Raghunath, please.
Wow. How do you know if the underlying desire or curiosity to explore other women is solely driven by lust? Or is there a genuine curiosity or interest to connect with others?
It's
I
both.
think I'm going to let every woman answer that question. The first thing that initially pops into my head is, there's a time in a boy's life where they have to become men.
Oh.
There's a time in every boy's life, there's a band, Boys to Men. It's like we've sort of like lost that in our culture. We've sort of can just like play around and not be serious about anything. And everything's disposable. Relationships are disposable. Love is disposable. Marriage, that's disposable. And because of it, men as a class in general have just become weak. and they can't just they can't make commitments. They can't put their feet on the ground. And so if I had a son, and this, I think he might be old enough to be my son, I'd say, you got to find someone who you love and love them. Don't treat them as if they're like a disposable plastic bag. If they're the one, if you're in a sacred relationship, make it sacred. Make a commitment, make it sacred. And how do you know? Of course you're curious. That's just like everybody's curious. But you know what? That's part of being loved. You're zeroing in and you're falling in love. And otherwise, it's like, oh, she's interesting. She's interesting. She's interesting. This is the whole thing about our spiritual life. Of course, it's called, we think we want to enjoy the entire world. You know who else thought like that? Ravana of the Ramayana. He wanted to enjoy, he had already had a harem. And he also wanted Sita, but Sita's also already married. It doesn't matter. He's got unlimited desires. Desires will never be fulfilled. You'll meet one very interesting person, and you'll be in a sacred relationship with her, you know, and then you'll find another. Oh, she's also interesting, and then you get bored of her because you thought she was interesting, but it actually turns out she's not so interesting. And then you'll find another person, and it never ends. You know why? Because everyone's interesting. I think we just have to be committed and not follow the whims of the mind, because the mind always has newer, brighter options, and they especially become brighter and newer when we're in a bad place, you know. Nowadays, the sad thing is culture doesn't encourage commitment. Culture sort of like encourages live to the edge, live right on the edge. Go right past go right past the railing, you know, drive with one wheel off the cliff. It tempts you to the brink of disaster. Everything, not just sexually, financially, everything is, there's no margins for safety anymore. And because of that, disasters happen and people's lives become train wrecks. And, if you've been through this already and you're a little bit older, you get it. And it's time to start over with some sort of values. And that's why we push these values again and again. These cultures push these values. So men out there and women out there, but you know, if a woman wants to have children, there are windows. There's a window in there. So there's more of a race against the clock. And guys, well, whatever. And if you're a woman, I'd give the advice that a guy should know if they're serious about you within a year. And if they're not serious about you, don't just stand up for your own self-respect and say, you know what? Sorry, I'm worth much more than that. Either get serious or get out of my life. You're wasting my life.
You're talking about marriage. Like, in other words, if you've been together for a year with a guy, either you're talking about marriage now or you're just in a sense wasting your time. Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. You know, truthfully, this is a whole show in itself and we could get into it, but I think women are the gatekeepers and they have to say, it's over. And be careful who you let in. And there should be, no, it's hard. Sorry, you missed it. You missed the chance. That window's closed. Or else these guys, they just waste these women's time for years and years and years. And they're never manning up. They're never manning up. And so there has to be some type of commitment. And you're not helping them grow up by just saying, yeah, whatever. I always say that you need also, when it comes to the commitment, they need a ring and a date.
Put a ring on
it. A ring and a date. Put a ring on it. Yeah. You need when they say, well, we're engaged. How long have you been engaged for? 4 years. 4 years. You've been engaged for 4 years? That's not an engagement. An engagement is a ring and a date. And I would never, if I was a woman, I would never let a person propose to me and let's say said, here's the ring and I want to get married on this particular date. Right. Anyway, that's me. Call me old-fashioned.
Conservative Raghunath.
Conservative Raghunath.
No, that was solid. That was solid, Raghu. I appreciate that.
Anyway.
Are you reading the comments?
I'm reading all the comments. Okay.
Did you do okay?
I think I did
People
okay.
seem to like it. Okay.
All right. I'm going to ask you a question, Sarah.
All right.
This one made me cry.
It made you cry?
It made me cry for the fathers, Italian fathers of the world. Dana DiCiaro says, the essence of nature is a cycle of birth and death.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, this isn't the question. She has
That
a
is the
different question. Yeah, that is this is an older question. She has a newer question.
Oh, I see.
The essence of nature is a cycle of birth and death and preservation of life while it exists in whatever sense. Can you speak about the preservation and the creation aspect of spirituality and how that looks for us on a broad scale and perspective for our soul over our many reincarnations?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that material nature dies, the soul is preserved, and then the soul is reborn into a different medium?
Mm-hmm.
Does the soul even die then, or does it just ultimately become so purified where we one day just become completely absorbed in Krishna as the ultimate preservation?
Okay. Yes, she said, does the soul ever even die?
Yeah, does the soul ever even die? Okay.
Or does it just become so purified that just one day we're so complete?
That's Dana. She's a longtime listener,
Yeah.
and she's been to India with me, and she lives in North Carolina.
Okay.
Good question, Dana.
Thank you, Dana. So yeah, so she began by asking about the essence of the nature. The essence of nature is a cycle of birth and death. Yeah, she uses the word nature, and in Sanskrit, the word sometimes translated as nature is prakriti. There's prakriti and purusha. Right? Prakriti refers to the material energy. Purusha refers to the spiritual energy. Prakriti is unconscious. Purusha is conscious. Prakriti is like stuff, and Purusha is consciousness or person. Right. So this material world is a combination of these two energies of nature, material nature, and spiritual nature. Material energy and spiritual energy. And the Bhagavad-Gita, it speaks of this in the 7th chapter, right at the beginning. It says, earth, water, do you know that verse, Raghu? Put you on the hot seat. Excellent. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. That's a very broad way, broad strokes of categorizing the material energy. It's made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then the very subtle elements of mind, intelligence, and ego. Altogether, these make the material energy. And the nature of the material energy is that it is constantly in flux. So when she mentions cycle of birth and death, or creation and destruction, that is the nature of the material energy. It's always moving and always shifting. Never stops, actually. That's how it functions. And then the next verse, the next one?
7:6. Apariyam etastvanyam prakriti vidime param. That one?
That's the one.
7:6.
Yeah. So here it's saying the word prakriti is being used. It says, but there's para prakriti, or the superior or supreme spiritual prakriti, spiritual energy. And then there's aparayang etastvanyam. Then he says, but there's this, besides this lower energy, the upper.
I love when I get Kaustubha's hot seat questions right.
Yeah, you're on fire. So he says aparayang etastvanyam. There's this apara prakriti, the lower energy, and then but he says the next line, besides that, prakritim vidime param, the spiritual energy, the higher energy. So he says, besides those 8 things that I just mentioned, there's a higher energy, the spiritual energy, the param prakriti. And he says, jiva bhutam mahabaho, that constitutes the jiva, the spirits, the souls, all of us. And he says, and what are they doing? They're busy exploiting the material energy. So that's what's going on in this world, is the spiritual energy, which means us, we're busy exploring and trying to enjoy the material energy. And that's the nature of this world. But so the idea is, she mentions, does the soul ever die? No, because the soul is made out of spiritual energy. Not only does it never die, it never changes. Now the mind may change, and certainly the body may change, but the soul never changes. But because the soul identifies with the mind and body. We think we're changing. And because the soul, which by nature is blissful, identifies with the mind and body, it loses touch with that spiritual nature. And so then rather than feeling spiritual bliss 24/7, we're feeling depression sometimes. Sometimes we're feeling some elation, then it goes down and we're feeling some depression. And then we're feeling some confusion. And then we're feeling, we go through all of these changing states. So she says, does the soul ever even die? No, the soul is eternal. It never dies. Or does it just ultimately become so purified where we just one day become completely absorbed in Krishna as the ultimate preservation? That's almost exactly right, Dana. It's not that the soul becomes purified because the soul by nature is pure. But if we can purify the mind, then that mind no longer becomes a distraction, or the mind no longer takes us off into the realms of depression and confusion and so on. So through the practice of bhakti yoga, we purify the mind. We bring the mind to mantra. We bring the mind to truth in the form of Bhagavatam. We bring the mind to the beauty of the form of Radha and Krishna. We bring the mind to these purifying, powerfully purifying objects. And so the mind can shift from saying, I will find my happiness through the material energy, to I find complete bliss and connection with the spiritual energy. And once the mind has been reestablished in that way, then we're in touch with our, now there's not a conflict between the mind and the soul, and we feel that nature of the soul again. So yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing its own true nature. And so the soul is eternal, the body and mind are temporary, always shifting. As we purify the mind, then that true nature will come out again. And that's preserved, because spiritual energy is always preserved. It's never changing or shifting or being destroyed.
And Dana is listening right now, and she said, wow, Kaustubha, that was incredible, blown away.
All right, Dana, I'm glad you liked it. I hope it's helpful.
It's good. You're getting
Thank you
immediate validation for that answer, Kaustubha, from the
right.
person who asked it themselves, as well
Thank
as everybody else.
Thank you, Dana. Love having Dana here.
Yeah.
I saw Dana in was it the Ayurveda course? I think it was Madhu's Ayurveda yesterday or something like that.
By the way, we had Madhu on yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
We got so many positive feedbacks from this guy. He is a powerful, powerful, powerful educator. He's really great. If you miss those courses on Patreon, if you're not part of that little Patreon party we have going, join that crazy cult. That's the inner circle. That's like the Mason. That's like the Masons. We have secret handshakes, everything. And that is all right. We forgot to put the plug. This is a community-supported podcast.
All right.
If you want to help support our little club, please do, and help keep this boat afloat at patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. And thanks for everybody helping this go.
I want to mention that Madhu did 2 classes today. Satchidananda Swami did 1. The first Madhu and Satchidananda Maharaj's meditation, they were posted on Patreon, the recordings of them. So if you didn't see it live, you can see them. Some reason for the second class that Madhu did yesterday in Ayurveda, Zoom is still processing it, like still now.
Say what?
Yeah, so I hope, I'm hoping it didn't get lost.
You know what? Zoom has a new download. They got to get that new download.
I got it. So hopefully it'll appear today and I'll be able to put that up.
Okay.
All right. You ready for the next question?
Ready, sir.
All right. Let's pull it up. Hey, this is coming from our dear friend, Aditi.
Aditi G.
Prabhu, it's a short question, but it's a deep question, Raghu. You're going to be challenged to answer this question well. All right? I mean, it's a challenging question. Prabhu, what does it mean to give your life to your guru? That statement scares me a little bit from taking the next step.
Give your life to your guru. That's a good question. Aditi G. Aditi's a long time Wisdom of the Sages listener. Maybe even before Wisdom of the Sages, she was around too. Well, it's sort of the way it's put out there. Give your life to your guru almost sounds like an abduction is going on, and you've been hiding from this person who's been chasing you down, and you finally just got to give up. You got to give up. It's going to take you prisoner. We shouldn't be looking at it like that. But what it basically means is we have been off the map and just trying to figure out, I don't know if you remember the first time you've ever driven in New York City, and you're just sort of like, whoa, especially downtown New York City, where you're just like, okay, Warren Street, Hudson Street, Chambers Street, and you're just like completely lost. It really means, I know you think you know everything. Just put on the GPS, Raghu. Just put the GPS on and just surrender to that direction that's coming from the satellite and telling you, go right, go left, go straight, go right. So the guru doesn't like take control of your discernment, doesn't take control of even, it's not a sick codependent relationship, but it means I want to follow that spiritual path. The guru is not even representing himself. He's representing the tradition. Like the question you got today from Tracy was, you weren't giving your personal opinion on what Tracy should do. You just recommended what sacred literature recommends. And it's saying, listen, we might have some desires. We might have some, if your desire is prema or pure love of Godhead, this is what all the sages have said. So you speaking in like Guru Kaustubha, you just represented Vyasadeva. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to find people who you feel like you've been on this path and you want to hear what the guru has to say. Now, if you don't have a particular guru in mind, the Veda, we have the Bhagavatam here. We have the purports of the Bhagavatam, and they can represent guru to some degree. And sometimes you find people, they can be friends, they can be peers. I have people like Kaustubha in my life, or I have other friends. I have older people on this path that I look up to that are not official gurus, but they have some insight into life. They've walked this path. I trust the way they walk and talk and move in this world. And those are the people I want to go to advice for. Those are the people when I have those big questions, when I'm at a fork, I want to turn to them. What do you think about this? Huh?
Are you ready to give your life to me, Raghu?
Be ready to what? I'm sorry.
Give your life to me.
I will, man.
That was the question.
Yeah.
Give your life to me.
Now, Rebecca just wrote in something, the Chait Guru, the guru in the heart, which is also true. There is a guru within, but that you have to be careful also. Oh, she said she learned it from me. There is this guru in the heart, and I learned it from, this is what the Bhagavatam says. So guru is also within the heart. The only problem if you just exclusively say guru's in the heart, because you're not alone, Aditi. A lot of people fear, give life to guru, join some weird cult. I get that. But you have to be careful when it's just guru within the heart, because guru within the heart could also mean my fear in the heart, my anxiety in the heart, my lack of trust in the heart. These things also are within the mind. And it seems like it's coming from some deep intuition, but it could come from one of those things. You know, could come from lust in my heart. That is not, and then I mistake it to be like, no. This is my real love. I thought I was in love, but this is my real love. Careful with the guru in the heart. That's why you need guru within the heart, but you need to go with guru is within and without. So giving your life to guru is not, you're not being kidnapped, human trafficked. That you are actually giving your life in love to, like, I want to be on the path of liberation. And guru also is the guru varga, or a clan of gurus leading you. It doesn't have to be one particular person. And generally that gets singled. And by the way, guru should also represent the Bhagavatam. If Kaustubha just said, hey, chant anything you want to Tracy in that first question, I'd start to question Kaustubha, because you can't just, as a teacher, you can't just make stuff up. Stuff comes down into cyclic chains. It's a descending process. If I went to an acupuncturist and I said, well, where'd you go to acupuncture school? They can't just say, I'm just figuring it out on my own. Let me stick this needle in your eyeball. I think it should work. If I go into a heart surgeon, I want to make sure the heart surgeon's been trained. Where'd you learn heart surgery from? Just figuring it out as I go. No. Okay, I think
you have to go to the clan of gurus.
You got to go to the clan of gurus.
You got the cult and you got the clan going today, Raghu.
Yeah, sorry, cults and clans. Anyway.
No, I think that was all very helpful. You know, could I add just one thing to that real quick?
Yes, Prab.
Is that, I think it's fine that you're a little scared to take that step. I think it should be, in the sense that just like, you give your life in a marriage, it's like an important step. You got to be real careful when you take that step. And, like, take Raghu and I, like our relationship with Radhanath Swami, who we both see as, he wasn't our initiating guru, but we both see him as like our instructing guru. When we say give him our lives, we really feel like that. It's like, we'll sit down and say, our faith in him and his understanding is so deep. We've had so many years of observing him and hearing from him that we can get it, that this person's more in touch with them than we are. And if he were to tell us, hey guys, change it up and do something like this, we'd be like, okay, we're ready to do that. Now, of course, if he started getting weird or started, misrepresenting, the Shastra, and so on, then obviously that would be a concern. But you really do give your heart and you give your life in a way that in a similar way that you do in another loving relationship, like any deeply loving relationship, you kind of give yourself to that person. So
You always reserve a little discernment. You always do that.
Sure.
It's not like you just become a cult member. No one's interested. Krishna's not even interested in that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Kaustubha, you ready?
Yeah.
This is from Joseph Rubalcava.
Say
via
that again?
Joseph Rubalcava.
Rubalcava.
Rubalcava. Rubalcava. Anyway, Joseph.
You don't quite know how to pronounce it, but it's from Joseph.
When there's a lot of syllables, you just don't know where. They should put like marks. This is or bold parts of the syllable.
That's what's great about Sanskrit, right? You know how to pronounce it when you see it.
Yeah. Okay, so in the Bhagavad-Gita, it states that one should perform one's work in Krishna consciousness. What does this mean exactly? Should the work I'm doing, whatever it may be done in a way to serve Krishna? Or is it simply keeping Krishna in this teachings in your mind at all times? Keeping Krishna and his teachings in your mind at all times.
What an excellent question, Joseph. Thank you for asking that.
Great question.
Yes, so the Bhagavad Gita is going to, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, they say that the middle six chapters are the Bhakti chapters. This is the real essence of the Gita. And we go to the middle, because there's 18 chapters. So like the middle is the last chapter of the 9th verse. And that's a famous verse, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskar, that always think of me, deep within yourself, love me and serve me and so on. And that verse is so crucial that it's repeated again at the end, more or less, almost exactly the same at the end of the 18th chapter. The idea, yoga is all about the mind, and bhakti yoga is all about bringing the mind to God. And so when the Bhagavad Gita says that one should perform one's work in Krishna consciousness, it means that there is a state of consciousness wherein your mind is always connected with God. But the depth of that connection will look different at different levels of practice. So there's a really, there's a verse, it's a fascinating verse to me. There's one verse in the 8th chapter, it's 8:6, Yam Yam Vapi Smaram Bhavam, Raghu.
Tyachanti anti kalevaram.
Oh, this guy's just like
Oh, missed my day today.
Where he says that whatever one meditates on at the time of death, they will achieve that without fail, right? They'll take on the bhava of that, with the nature of that without fail. So that the state of your mind at the moment of death determines your next birth. So then the next, but it's not that you can just like switch it on at that time of death. You actually have to live it your whole life, and then it'll come to you at the time of death. So the next verse says, Tasmat, therefore, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, therefore all the time, right? All the time. Mam anusmara, always remember me, always think of me, always meditate on me. And then he says, Yudyacha, and at the same time fight, right? Because Arjuna was about to go into war. He was saying, even in the most difficult circumstances, your mind can be fixed on me. And so in the 12th chapter, Krishna is going to say, you know what? People are on all different levels. The best thing that you can, if you want to know, Arjuna asks him about meditation and what type of meditation is the best type of meditation, the most effective type in a sense. The meditation on your impersonal energy or on you, the form, Krishna. And Krishna will respond by saying, meditation on the impersonal energy is always troublesome and difficult. But those who meditate on my form with love, I quickly deliver them. And so he says, so just always think of me, bring your mind to me and focus your mind on me. But if you can't do that, right? And most of us can't do that. Most of us, our mind is distracted by a million things. If you can't do that, then you practice the regulative practices of bhakti yoga to bring your mind to me, right? So that means, okay, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to read Srimad Bhagavatam, then I'm going to chant, Maha Mantra, for a certain amount of time. Then I'm going to do these other practices of bhakti to help. Although my mind's not there on its own, I'm going to try to bring it there, and I'm going to try to get it accustomed to be there. And that's what one does through the practice of the regulative practices of bhakti yoga. But if you can't do that, then work for me, he says. Then work for me. So now what does that work look like? Does it mean as I'm working all the time, I'm thinking of God? That would be the highest level, but we may not be there. Well, then I can work, but the purpose of my work is to satisfy God. The results of that work are an offering to God. So then that's another level that one can perform their work in Krishna consciousness. I'm going to do this work as an offering, Maybe my mind's not fully absorbed all the time. I'm practicing that because I'm waking up and doing my japa and reading Bhagavatam and reading Bhagavad-Gita and associated with voice. And gradually my mind is naturally becoming more attracted and connected. They say that it's like a magnet. Sometimes a magnet gets old and rusty and it loses its ability to attract, but you can kind of, like sand it down and so on, and then it gets its strength back and it becomes strong and we become attracted again. And actually Krishna will say, and even if you can't do that due to the social circumstances that you're in, that you can't like do your job but do it for God, maybe your family's against it or for whatever the reason, he'll say, then at least work and give up the results of your work, even not to me. And I wanted to read something that Prabhupada says in there. He says that it is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually of that selfishness, right? And in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness or understand bhakti. So at least act selflessly. And higher than that is acting for God. And higher than that is practicing bhakti directly to retrain the mind to connect with God. And higher than that is to always think of God at every moment. And how you work for God might be on any of those levels, but we're trying to always increase it, always improve it, always purify it. Okay. And
Beautiful.
with that, Raghu, we'll move on to another question for you.
All right.
This is coming from Balaram Perez.
Great name.
But yeah, Balaram Perez, I believe, attended the Gurukula, the school in Mayapur. It's like the most far out school, isn't it?
Very interesting. Very cool school.
It's very beautiful there, and it's like kind of stepping into the Vedic age, like going.
I really want a do-over on my elementary education and junior high school.
Yeah. So this is from Balaram, but it's a tough question too. He said, because he grew up. You with us, Raghu? Because your picture just went out.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. So
my pictures.
So he grew up in a bhakti yoga school. So he grew up with friends that were practicing bhakti or learning to practice bhakti on some level or another. So I think his question stems out of that context.
Okay.
And it's natural that when kids hit their teenage years, they may kind of they may have been trained in bhakti, but then they start to explore the world in different ways. So I think that's the broader context of this question.
Okay.
He says, how can we deal with spiritual friends that we expect a certain level of Vaishnava etiquette from, a certain level of bhakti-related behavior?
Sure.
That have completely let us down every time we're around them? It's so painful to experience this feeling over and over again. I wish to do something both for the benefit of the friend and for my own well-being too. What can I do in this situation? Please advise me.
I don't know his story, but this can sort of relate in a lot of people's worlds too. Perhaps he was growing up with, like you said, in a spiritual environment, and then all of a sudden some of his friends aren't acting so spiritual. I always say this on the show, so if you're regular to the show, it's a big Raghu hashtag, is trade in, especially because he said the key word, trade in your expectations for appreciations.
He said expect a certain level of, right? He expected. Trade in your expectations for appreciations, or else what happens is your expectations almost come out as shaming, finding what's wrong in them. And the problem is they're either young on the path, or they're struggling in their growth, or they're suffering because of their material choices. So if in fact I am bigger and going to be above it, I actually have to be bigger and above it. If I actually see like this person's doing something that's not up to par, they're lowering the bar, it's probably not going to help with me seeing their shortcomings. Now, there's certain people, for example, with you in my life, if you said, Raghu, I really think you should up your game here, I'd hear you out, But you got to be careful. There's certain people that if you say something like that to them, they will recoil, and it's not going to actually help them. It comes off arrogant, and you got to be also careful that you're not being arrogant, because when you start learning a lot of this stuff, Vedic culture, Sanskrit, rules or regulations, or deep into meditation, it's very, very difficult to not walk around holier than thou. And so, and I always keep at the forefront of my mind that at any minute I can be in total Maya. At any minute I can be in total illusion. And some of us have been through this. We've been on a path, and all of a sudden all these reversals have come. So if I keep that at the forefront of my mind, it will help me from being a little upset, condemning, judgmental with other people. And I should put it more on myself. How can I be better? How can I be strict with myself, and how can I be tolerant with others? And as soon as I start to complain about others, a red flag should come up. And maybe they aren't the people that, because we do need people that we can reveal our hearts to. Maybe they're not those people. Maybe you have to go to a higher caliber of person to reveal your heart to. Maybe they're not going to live up to it, or maybe they're breaking some principle that you hold valuable. But I always think better to be tolerant, better to train ourselves into seeing the good. We've created a culture where we train ourselves to see what's wrong with everybody. And it's a big problem. We've got a really hateful world going on, even the name of justice and caring about the world. And what we've done is we've fine-tuned our criticism, our bad thinking, what is wrong out there. And in Bhakti-yogi, we're more considered of what am I doing wrong and how can I change? Make our own bed. Make our own bed first. I like that, Raghu. I really like the point you made. Be strict with oneself and tolerant with others. That's just like a nice solid principle there.
Strict with ourselves, tolerant with others.
All right.
It's a good little law.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Raghu. All right, your turn.
All right. Hit me.
Okay. This is from Jay Evans from the UK. We got a lot of UK people.
I love the UK people.
My question is, do we have any say as a soul on how we take form in our next incarnation? I understand karma plays a role and will influence this, but do we have any choice in this? Sounds like he's got some desires for a particular form.
Or do you think he's aiming for a certain form? I was thinking it was just like, I read it the other way. Just like, my God, if we don't, like anything can happen,
Yeah, it's just like, it's put your hand in a basket. I got an earthworm in a chicken coop. That's horrible news. I want a hawk. I want to be a hawk. I want to be the African elephant. Right?
We hear about Raghu's animal desires. So much is
it's all coming out now. My shadow.
The Pippin thing.
My shadow.
Yeah. So Jay, We do have a say in this. We do have a hand in this.
We have a big say.
That yes, as long as we haven't reconnected with God, reconnected with Krishna, reconnected with that divine source of our very existence, as long as we haven't, then we're operating in this material realm under the law of karma. And the law of karma is delivering results according to how we act, or you could say according to our consciousness, because we act on the basis of our consciousness. And then the law of karma responds to that. And perhaps the primary way that the law of karma responds to our consciousness or activities is through developing the next body that we take. And then we can take the form of anything. And it's said, it's just like here's my hand. And if you wanted to design a glove for it, you design it exactly according to the measurements of my hand. In a similar way, the next body is designed exactly according to the measurements of our consciousness, right? It's made to fit. And therefore there's so much stress, like the Vedanta Sutra will begin with Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now is the time to inquire into the absolute, right? Why? Because you've taken this human form. Because right now you're in the human body. It's giving you facility to ask the most important questions about reality and about your existence. And when we're in the human body, we have that faculty, that facility to make that yogic spiritual inquiry. And if we choose not to, if we choose to pursue, for instance, sex, food, the material comforts, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Basically, they all fit around these, right? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. If that becomes our focus rather than spiritual inquiry, then we can take on a form that has that consciousness. And basically, that is what the animals are doing. And so throughout Srila Prabhupada's books, I know it sounds a little, yes, someone's saying Prabhupada's very direct when he says these things. But it's just like, yeah, if we live life in the consciousness of an animal, only concerned with eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, maybe in a bit more polished way, but still the same general concerns, then Prakriti, as we're speaking about with Dana, the material energy will move in such a way to facilitate a body and circumstances for us that fit that state of consciousness.
It's a great saying, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The first time I heard that, I was like,
Summed it all up.
yeah, that's it. That's all we're doing.
Just, you got to think about it.
And that's right out of the Bhagavad-Gita, right?
Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So yeah, we have the choice. We have the human body. We have the opportunity to inquire into the absolute, to engage our body in activities that are in pursuance of that higher goal, to make decisions based on that kind of reasoning and thought and knowledge. And if we choose to do that, then the next form we take can be the spiritual form, right? The eternal form, the form that's composed of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. But if we choose to stay on that animal level, or like go down to the animal level, then we can take a form that's suitable for that consciousness. Or we could take another human form if that's where our mind and our consciousness is at. So we have the power, we have the choice to become, in a sense, a victim of that law of karma, or to transcend the law of karma. All right.
Great answer.
Thank you, Robert.
There's such a good question coming up next by Bhakti Ed. I don't know if we have time for it now. It's already.
Want to do it?
Yeah.
Go over quick. Can you handle this one quick? No?
Well, okay. Bhakti Ed says 32 years ago, I was
Hey, I got to read this one.
Oh, okay. Go.
32 years ago, I was an on fire devotee for a small period of time.
AKA fanatic. No.
How on fire were you?
I'm Bhakti Ed. I'm kidding, brother.
Okay. But then he uses this term that we may have to translate for some people. Then I was deprogrammed during the anti-cult 80s and basically worked out my bhakti yoga unknowing. And since then, basically has worked out his bhakti yoga unknowingly in other spiritual traditions. We should explain what being deprogrammed.
I'll get into that. Let me hear this.
I'm now back with the sampradaya, with the lineage, through association with you guys, and back to steady sadhana, steady spiritual practice. I can't help but feel duped and cheated out of decades of practice and spiritual growth. How do I deal with the regret I experienced.
Bhakti Ed, what a question. What a
Yeah.
good question. And I'm so sorry you had to go through this traumatic event. Matter of fact, I wish
Criminal
it would get
event.
criminal event.
How can it not be criminal? How could they
It's-
let people get away with doing this?
It's unbelievable that I don't even know if it exists anymore, but in the 80s, 70s, etc., the idea was there's cults out there, and the cults have got my child, and parents would pay $20,000 to these guys who would go kidnap their children and isolate them in a room away from everyone. Like, for example, blindfold them. I would like to hear Ed's story.
Throw them in the back of a van.
Throw them in the back of a van.
Drive them
Don't
off to a
tell.
hotel room somewhere.
Yeah, and then
some distant house somewhere.
yeah, and then start like desecrating their philosophy and minimizing the importance and calling everything this is just made up and it's created and stuff like that, and
Force them to eat
chiseling
meat.
away.
Have sex in front of them.
Matter of fact, my friend, who you know too, his name is Abai. He told me he was deprogrammed once.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
Abai is super sharp,
Yeah.
maybe one of the funniest guys we've ever met too.
Yeah.
And he got deprogrammed. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, a car pulled up and they grabbed me, threw me in the back of the car, blindfolded me, took me to the forest somewhere in a cabin. And he goes, I was really into marijuana before I was a practicing devotee, and I completely gave it up. And they started saying stuff like, hey man, I know you want some marijuana. And they broke out all these joints and they said, come on, just try some marijuana. And so I just started smoking it with them. And I smoked it and smoked it and smoked it. And I said, what happened? He said, I smoked them right under the table and I walked right out the door. So it's one of these things. You get kidnapped, and what happens is it breaks a little part of your heart and a little bit of your faith, and you start to question the people that you trusted. And doesn't
But you know
happen
what
to
they
everybody.
found?
I've known a lot of people who've been deprogrammed, but if your faith isn't strong, your realization is strong, it breaks you, and then you feel 30 years later, you feel duped. I've been cheated by this criminal activity. But I got to say, in defense of anti-cult people, the Hare Krishna movement, in one sense, it had all the makings of a full-blown cult. You had a very isolated group of people. You were either in or out. You were either in Maya or you were a pure devotee, basically.
Yeah.
And you were living in the temple, or you were like way out of it.
You're saying
Like,
back in
like I'm
the
looking at Mara
70s,
right now. She's completely in Maya right now. I'm looking at everybody on this. You're all in Maya, or you're a pure devotee. You know. So we did create they created a cult atmosphere, you know, where you went from like being a 60s flower child doing whatever, and then all of a sudden you're an Orthodox priest. And so any loving parent's going to be like, what the hell happened to my child?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of sensitivity to making it understandable
no,
to
no
their
one made it
parents or
understandable.
whatever. Yeah.
And but anyway, I'm gonna anyway. Don't feel duped. Feel, you know, deepen your dedication. Study the philosophy. Go on with your sadhana, and get fired up. And look at that as somehow it was a blessing for you to get even more serious. And whatever practices he had, other spiritual practices, I'm sure they deepened his insight. And here's the thing about when you get a taste for Krishna, it always stays. And then Krishna just starts to draw you back. But now Ed's going to be drawn back with a deeper realization, with deeper commitment and deeper connection. And it's not like nothing happened the last 30 years. You've had a lot of realization about your life. And you have to forgive all those people. And you have to forgive your parents, because oftentimes they just wanted what's best for you and they didn't know. That's all I'd say. Right. That's all I'm going to say about that, because we want to keep it tight with our schedule.
Yeah. Thank you. Hey, tomorrow, what's going on, Raghu?
What's going on tomorrow?
I'll tell you what's going on. I'm interviewing you tomorrow and Parmananda tomorrow for Lessons from the Road,
All right.
the hardcore punk rock world of Parmananda and Raghunath and all of the deep spiritual lessons they gained traveling as monks in a hardcore band.
I think we have to start it from unmuting Bhakti Louie from Antidote, who's on the show.
We got to get Louis in there.
We got to get Louie's 2 cents, and we got to get Henry, because we stayed and wrote a record at Henry's house, and he can tell us some good Mother Yamuna stories, right, Flood? And so, anyway, thanks for joining us. We're excited to tell some tour stories. And I really want to, thank everybody for listening for the first time. Question Day's fun. Join us every day here. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock again. Get to sleep in a little bit. And then Monday, 5 a.m. We appreciate it. And if you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. Anybody can do that. Just pick up your phone. You can do it right now. If you're listening on Zoom and you want to get on Zoom, email Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Forgive me if I didn't say good morning to you guys. I'm going to say it right now. And by the way, this is the Mayapuris playing right now. We love them. They are one of our favorite kirtan. They dance, they sing, they jump up and down. They wear cool colored dhotis. We love them. And anyway, thanks Kaustubha Prabhu for your association, and
thank you,
Mara, for your assistance. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Now we're going to dance. Thanks, Robin Shaver, Golden Brown Family, Onions, Garlic, and Ginger. Really got to see who that is. Sophie Georgiou,